Distinguished colleagues and guests, good afternoon. It's January 26th, 2022, 2 p.m. Moscow time. We're beginning the panel session for the defense of the thesis by Laith and Alzayadi. The thesis is submitted for the academic degree of candidate of technical sciences. The specialization is 1 to 2 mathematical modeling, numerical methods, and program complexes. The topic of the thesis is software and mathematical support for automated control of micro and nanozonde systems. Under the order issued by the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg State University, Alexander Gnyatov, as of October 29, 2021, I, Alexander Bogdanov, Doctor of Sciences in Physics and Mathematics, Professor of the Department of Fundamental Informatics and Distributed Systems, was appointed the Chairman of the Board. The order also approved the members of the Board, and let me introduce them. They all are working remotely today. So, Alexander Degtyaryov, Doctor of Technical Sciences, Associate Professor, Computer Modeling and Multiprocessing Systems Department of St. Petersburg State University. Do you hear in CS? Yes, I do. Okay, Dmitry Ovsyannikov, Doctor of Sciences in Physics and Mathematics, Professor and Head of the Department of Control Systems Theory for Electrophysical Facilities of St. Petersburg State University. You hear in CS? Yes, I do. Then Alexander Vadyakov, Doctor of Technical Sciences, Professor of the Computational Tools Department of St. Petersburg State Electrotechnical University. Do you hear in CS? Yes. Hello. Mikhail Ignatich, Doctor of Sciences in Physics and Mathematics, Professor of the Faculty of Science of Pavel Josef Shafarik University in Košice, Slovakia. Do you hear in CS? Yes, I do. And our candidate for the degree is Laith Alzayadi. Hello. And we also have the thesis supervisor, Sergei Andrianov, Doctor of Sciences in Physics and Mathematics, Professor of the Computer Modeling and Multiprocessor Systems Department of St. Petersburg State University. Yes, hello. I would like to inform you that the panel session of the Dissertation Board is being recorded and broadcast on the St. Petersburg State University website. And our panel session is also interpreted into English or into Russian if needed. And currently we have an email address posted on the page with live broadcast of the board session, and all listeners can submit their questions to Mr. Alzayadi online. The questions regarding the thesis or the scientific discussion and thus our listeners can participate in the discussion. These questions will be forwarded to me by our technical service, and I will read them out during the discussion. The questions must be related to the presentation and the content of the thesis, and do not forget to give your name and position if you submit a question. Questions that have nothing to do with a scientific discussion or thesis will not be voiced. As well as anonymous questions. Under the order on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, approved by local regulatory acts, the session of the Dissertation Board is valid, provided 2/3 of the appointed board members are present. The total number is not to be fewer than 4 people. Our board consists of 5 people. Everyone is here today, including 4 members of the board who are working remotely. And we have a multimedia connection with all of them, therefore we have the quorum. And I ask our member of the Department of Dissertation Board Support to fill out the attendance list. Our session should not last more than 2 hours, and the agenda is as follows. So first, the chairman's presentation about the documents submitted by the candidate for the degree and their conformity with the requirements. The chairman's replies to questions, if any. 5 minutes will be given to that, and the candidate's presentation providing an overview and findings of the research. 20 minutes will be given to the candidate for the degree. Then, third, questions to the candidate regarding the presentation, no more than 2 minutes per question. This will be followed by candidates' replies to the questions, then reports on the thesis. The board members will be taking the floor in turns to provide their reviews and questions. Then sixth, the chairman's report on the thesis. 10 minutes will be given to that, and the candidates' comments about the reports on the thesis and replies to questions. 20 minutes for that. Then we're going to have open discussion speeches of those present at the defense with a brief presentation of their positions or questions or suggestions to the candidate for the degree on the topic of their research. 10 minutes per anyone willing. And at that, I would like to ask you to fill the registration list stating your full name, academic rank, position, and place of work if you want to take the floor. Then the chairman will ask the questions submitted during the broadcast via our website. And I would like to draw your attention to the following fact. The written questions that take more than 2 minutes to read out will not be voiced. Then the candidate's replies to the questions, 2 minutes per question. Then the presentation of the candidate's thesis supervisor, 3 minutes for that. Then we may have a 5-minute discussion before the open balloting on conferring or non-conferring the academic degree. The discussion of the results of the defense is not broadcast. Then we are going to have open balloting. Then we're going to count the votes and record the results in the protocol. Afterwards, we're going to make a decision on whether to confer the academic degree to Mr. Alzayadi or not. And finally, we're going to listen to the candidate's closing speech. 2 minutes will be given for that. Any objections or questions about this agenda? No? None? Okay. Thank you. As there are no objections, I'll switch to our agenda. And first of all, I would like to ask you to switch off the sound on your mobile phones. Thank you. So, I begin. So the thesis by Laith Alzayadi for the academic degree of Candidate of Technical Sciences. The specialization is 1 to 2 mathematical modeling, numerical methods, and program complexes. Is titled Software and Mathematical Support for Automated Control of Micro and Nanozonde Systems. The thesis was approved for the defense by the order of the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg State University, issued on October 12, 2022. Mr. Alzayadi has prepared his thesis at St. Petersburg State University as a postgraduate student, and I already introduced his thesis supervisor, Sergei Andrianov. 6 published works describe the research findings of Laith Alzayadi. There is 1 article published in journals indexed in Web of Science and Scopus, and there are 2 articles published in peer-reviewed journals recommended by the Ministry of Education and Science of the Russian Federation. All the documents submitted by the candidate for the degree comply with the requirements of St. Petersburg State University and are found in the certification file of the candidate for the degree, and curator of the defense, member of the Department of Dissertation Board Support. Present here at the defense has all the copies. And before I give the floor to our candidate for the degree, I would like to ask the members of the board, distinguished members of the board, do you have any general questions to our candidate for the degrees? They need to consider the whole list of documents submitted by the candidate for the degree. No need for that. Okay then, Laith, you have the floor. 20 minutes. Distinguished members of the board, hello. I'm going to deliver a presentation on my thesis that is dedicated to software and mathematical support for automated control of micro and nanozonde systems. In this program, I considered the issues of application of mathematical and information technologies and the field of micro and nanozonde system modeling. The demand for such a field is mostly explained by the need to resolve similar problems, and secondly, we don't have. The second point is that we don't have a lot of developed methods and technologies for this field. The development of constructive and efficient instruments to study and construct micro and nanozonde systems was mostly associated with some specific goals of rather narrow field of application, and this leads us to the problem that mathematical and information technologies are not sufficiently used in the field. And the conducted analysis of traditional information technologies and within the framework of this goal did not demonstrate sufficient computational efficiency. This led us to the development of a universal tool, versatile tool, aimed both for the modeling of a broad range of problems and for the development and storage of ready-made solutions based on the use and definition of structural basic instruments. State-of-the-art physics problems are quite complicated, and it brings us to the need to develop and to define some developed methods that would provide sufficient efficiency and allow us to resolve the goal considering different limitations. The analysis of possible solution methods of considered problems has led to the fact that we decided to establish the process of study for specialized mathematical objects that could be integrated into resolved problems if we need that. And uniformity of this approach allows us to reduce the computational cost, and it should be mentioned that during the use of traditional instruments, the researcher has to duplicate similar procedures, and it leads us not just to the reduction of computational efficiency, but also requires rather complex intermediary calculations. In this work, I offered a range of approaches and methods to construct databases. Though it's not a full description, but still should be noted that when we use this approach, we managed to enhance the calculation efficiency of conducted experiments. And the methods and technologies described in the work can be used as an alternative to the current approaches. And the thesis consists of 4 chapters. List of literature sources and appendixes. And I would like to mention that the relevance of the issues considered in the thesis is supported by a range of works in different journals dedicated to similar developments. And for example, we can consider the list of articles in the literature source list. And the use of legal object concept allows us to study different effects separately, and that's practically impossible when you use traditional methods. And the used computational experiments are not just auxiliary, but also basic means for complex physics problems. In Chapter 3, I consider the issues of using state-of-the-art technologies in particle beam physics. And in this work, I also consider the need to reconsider the concept of different software products used in different physical studies. And I also drew particular attention to the development of databases and knowledge, and also to the construction of prototypes of expert systems. Special attention in the work is given to the problem of pegging of contemporary information technologies to specific beam physics problems. The formulas allow us not just to provide reviews of possible approaches. And as for Chapter 4, it considers the problems and methodologies for the modeling process in order to use the solutions. And we also consider the classification problems for the used information, and this chapter also considers the issues of specific description of mass separator modeling process. In particular, the use of symbolic definition of the objects allowed the author to carry out an in-depth analysis of possible solutions. And I also developed a software product based on prepared, so-called prepared objects that described different structural elements that are part of control system for the particle beam management, and if some additional work is introduced, this program can be can provide us the final finished product that is of interest not just for academic research but also for some educational means as well. And that's very important if we talk about the training of experts in particle beam management systems. And the final paragraph is dedicated to the study of spatial charge impact in the process of long-term evolution. To this end, as in the previous paragraph, the author uses the methods of computer algebra and also I used numerical modeling And within the framework of our calculation work, we managed to get a range of fascinating results that were confirmed by the publications of the authors. And in Appendix A, we have the formula descriptions of objects that are needed to describe and model the magnetic optic objects. And also the used technologies allowed me to get an efficient instrument for calculation procedures and the description of different physics objects. And above all, the approach allowed me to establish the control system for linear equations up until the 4th and 6th order. And in order to formulate the results, the researcher needs to use rather simple mathematical procedures that allows the researchers not just to conduct the search of optimal implementation of the considered systems, but also to so the first technical break, one of our board members got disconnected. Oh, that's it. The technical break is over. And above all, the proposed approach allows us to construct control systems from linear equations of the order of 4 and 6. And in order to formulate the existing results, the researcher needs to implement rather simple mathematical procedures, and it allows the researcher not just to search for optimal implementation of the considered systems, but also to provide the parametric studies in order to find the optimal solutions. And it should be also mentioned that the use of state-of-the-art computation technologies allows us to use multi-parametric characteristics of considered objects and processes quite efficiently from the point of view of calculation costs. The author published 6 works, and reports were presented at international conferences, and they demonstrate the level and the quality of work. Thank you. Thank you, Laith. Do you, the members of the board, have any questions or remarks on the thesis? May I ask a question? Yes. So you're working with cyber physical systems. but you use IML. Why don't you use SysML? Because I believe it would be quite natural to use SysML to describe such class of systems. Yes, I agree with you that further on we need to use state-of-the-art methods and technologies for systems modeling. Okay, thank you. Okay, as there are no other questions, then we shift to the speeches of the board members, and I offer to answer all the questions afterwards. So first we'll give the floor to this board members, and as all the reviews were already published on the website, I would like to offer to read out just the basic points, the questions or the remarks. Any objections about that? No. Okay. Okay, you can take your seat. Nice. And first of all, I would like to give the floor to Professor Degtyaryov. Yes, distinguished colleagues, hello. Well, if I wouldn't read the thesis, unfortunately, I would understand nothing from the report. But as I understand, the reasons are quite clear for that. Because the candidate for the degree is not a Russian speaker of Russian language. But if you read his work, the work is essentially a rather good methodological work. Namely, it summarizes the achievements in the field for the most recent 20, 30 years. And here I believe that's an advantage and achievement of the thesis supervisor, because he made this impetus for the candidate, so that the candidate described it all quite well. And I see it as one of the advantages and achievements for this work. And as I don't have a lot of time, I believe I'll switch to the remarks, to the critical remarks. As any work, this work has some critical remarks as well. That's quite natural. But the first theoretical question that I wanted to raise is that you see, all the methods that were considered by the candidate for the degree are dealing with isolated particles. And then we're talking about the fact that when we consider a beam, we consider a range of particles that interact with each other somehow, and so on and on. But physics itself is more complicated here, and how we form a beam from numerous particles, that's a question that still requires a lot of discussions, and the approach that the candidate for the degree offered here is, well, I'm not an expert in high energy physics and beam particle beam physics, but it seems to me still that it's not that reliable. That's the first remark. The second remark is that the provisions that were offered for the defense, and in this report they were not voiced fully. So these provisions, it's quite clear that they were formulated from the point of view of what is good to consider, but they are a bit excessive, and somehow not quite founded, because in the provisions that you take for the defense, you say that there is experimental substantiation of computational efficiency and increase of acceleration of the process. So, but that's not proven in the work. And the third remark that, from my point of view, is quite funny, but on the other hand, it reflects this state of things. Everyone is talking about artificial intelligence, neural networks today, saying that we can resolve all the problems using these techniques, but I would say that no, we won't resolve anything using them. And there's this paragraph 4.4, where you say that using in-depth learning will manage to do it all. And the paragraph is, very superficial. And maybe you could take it out, because it proves nothing. It is unfounded, indeed. So I believe you could have crossed it out, and that's it. And these are my critical remarks. Thank you, Alexander. And then Professor Ovsyannikov. Dmitry, please, you have the floor. Do you hear me? Yes. What do I want to say? Yes. Indeed. We can have consider a lot of critical remarks. Alexander Borisovich has voiced some. I believe I'll join in his comments. That's it. But it should be mentioned still that this work is really immense, and it was quite complicated, and Laith used a very complex mathematical framework, and he tries to provide answers to some physics problems, and he prepared a lot, so that's good. Overall, it is this work is of interest. I won't mention the details because, as Alexander Borisovich mentioned, we could mention all the misprints and so on, but that's not what's important. So my critical remark is as follows: that in this work on page 20, you say that in chapter 5 you're going to consider calculation experiment, but there is no article, there is no chapter 5, and there are no specific calculations in the thesis. Certainly that is a bit problematic, but still the study was quite immense, and maybe you just forgot to mention that, but that's the remark that I wanted to mention. Therefore, I believe that the title of the thesis does not fully reflect the content. So here I'd like to stop. That's my remark. Okay, Dmitry, thank you. I would like to draw the attention of all the members of the board that in your speeches you should have this final speech. Do I get it right that the previous speakers support the thesis? If you do, then you should say that as well. Yes, we support the work. Okay, Professor Vadyaha. So I'll take a bit of a different view as an IT expert. Though I'm not an expert in beams, but the work seemed very interesting to me, and I was fascinated to read it. But what did I see there from my point of view? First of all, contemporary stage of software development can be characterized by the fact that models are becoming full-fledged participants, so to say. We need a lot of them, and they are used across the life cycle. Model is not just development time, that's a run time, and we can consider digital twins here and so on and on. We can consider lots of things. Therefore, we need models that work both at the stage of development time. These are one models. At the production stage, we have different models. At support stage, we have third models. And in all technologies, starting from agile architecture, we use models. We need models. And these model use is a continuum. And the author mentioned it quite well, but unfortunately he was shy enough to say that. But we're talking about a continuum of models. Because when we're talking about this subject specifically, these are models oriented at the production phase. And then it's clear why we need neural networks, because we're going to fine-tune them in the equipment. They should be integrated. And as for the construction of models, how should we construct them? We know how to construct discrete models, though we don't synthesize them fully. And as for analogous systems, we are working quite poorly with them. But still the author managed to do something here, though he did not particularly resolve the problem. Therefore, I believe that this work is quite interesting. And I would like to wish the candidate for the degree to continue this work. And my critical remarks are as follows. You should have used sysml instead of UML, because we're talking about cyber-physical system. Second point is that you should have formulated the specificity of requirements for the developed model systems. And also there are some editing problems. And still I believe that the thesis still complies with the requirements of the order on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, and Mr. Alzayadi deserves the academic degree of candidate of technical sciences and specialization 1 to 2, mathematical modeling, numerical methods, and program complexes. And Articles 9 and 11 of the above-mentioned order are not violated, and I support this work. Thank you. Thank you, Alexander. Then I would like to give the floor to Professor Gnatic. Professor, please, you have the floor. Hello, do you hear me? Yes, we do. Okay. Well, first of all, I would concentrate on the first part of my report, where I mentioned that that's quite a complicated task from the point of view of control of the beam, though it seems that physically from the very beginning the goal is quite clear. The description of one particle is quite simple, but when you talk about numerous particles during the formation of the beam, that's a complex nonlinear problem. And the formation of the beam always creates a lot of technical problems, because the beam should always be narrow, accurate, needle form in order to meet the goals. And here you need to take care of the stability so that it won't scatter, so that it would stick to its trajectory. Therefore, from the point of view of control, that's a complex problem that the author decided to describe. Therefore, it demonstrates the relevance of this problem. And another thing is that it is really practical. Such problems are continuously considered at accelerators. And luminosity of this particles grow, and this has an impact on the keeping of these particles in the trajectory, in their forms. Therefore, the automation of this control is of paramount importance. And as for the novelty, I emphasized that the author provided a uniform approach to this automatic decision. I won't go into some details, but still I wanted to emphasize that the main goal was to resolve the equations, to find self-coordination for beam trajectory and the geometric characteristics of the field. Then the system of linear differential equation was resolved for the beam movement. And the author demonstrated that it can be given in matrix type up until the order of nonlinearity that we need. And here I would like to emphasize that the author also used different numerical methods as well as softwares of MAPL mathematics. And I'd like to emphasize that. Then I would like to concentrate on my critical remarks. I read them out. First is that you emphasize symbol calculations importance, and the question is, did you develop codes in Mathematica or in Maple in order to describe the characteristics of structural elements with set accuracy for nonlinearities for general use? Because your appendices are quite complex and some equations are really bulky and they take pages for magnetic field, for example. The next question is, what's the choice criterion for the specific figure of the members of Taylor range? And can you give some specific examples here? And how is this choice dependent on the intensiveness of the magnetic field? On the intensity of the magnetic field. And yet another general question. Can you use your results during the improvement of automatic control of charged particle beam on the Nika collider at Dubna? And the fourth remark is that in Formula 1.2 you have a mistake. You did not describe this B matrix of 3 to 6 dimensionality. But still, my remarks don't compromise the overall high value of this work. The results were described in numerous publications, and they were tested at Russian and international conferences. Therefore, my verdict is, based on the results of the thesis, based on the publications, I believe that the thesis by Laith Alzayadi, titled Software and Mathematical Support for Automated Control of Micro and Nanozonde Systems, meets the requirements of the order as of November 19th, 2021, on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University. And Mr. Alzayadi deserves the academic degree of Candidate of Technical Sciences and specialization in mathematical modeling, numerical methods, and program complexes. And Articles 9 and 11 of the above-mentioned order are not violated. Okay, thank you, Michal. My speech will be divided into several parts. So, first of all, about my review. I won't mention the importance of this work once again, because it's important for the development of acceleration equipment. But still, I wanted to mention that Alexander Ivanovich mentioned it quite well when he talked about the information component of this work. And still, I have a general question here. Though I am a mathematician and I worked with theoretical physics for most of my life, and I worked with a problem that of integration of trajectories into non-linear problem of particles interaction. And not every approach can be elegantly integrated in this problem. Therefore, I wanted to ask, does this approach provide for some kind of architectural algorithm? How is it integrated into non-linear problem of beam movement? And the second point is that I'm a bit between these opinions of my colleagues. I wanted to emphasize the mathematical depth of this work, mathematical level of this work, because it is quite high. And this in-depth learning, description, and all these paradigms, I believe they seem a bit, excessive. Maybe I misunderstood why Alexander understood, but it seems to me that they are not looking natural in the structure of the thesis. But this had no impact whatsoever on my view of this thesis. I believe that this thesis complies with all the meets all the requirements of St. Petersburg State University, and I believe Mr. Alzayadi deserves the academic degree. That's it. Thank you. And now I would like to give you some time to answer all the remarks. Thank you. Yes, you should go there to the rostrum. Okay. Thank you. I'll start with the last question. Your question. On the one hand, we use the description of particle isolation, but in this work, I considered the provision of matrix formalization, and unfortunately, I did not manage to accurately use the object in this work. And as for the second question, in your review, I agree with it. Maybe I should have formulated the problem a bit differently. And the second question is that, and also to the comments of Professor Vadeha, yes, I agree that I should have used SML. And as for his another question, I agree that unfortunately I had some inaccuracies in the work. And as for the questions of Professor Ignatic, I did not have a goal to use mathematics on Maple. And the second question about Nika, yes, we can use that on Nika Collider, but we need to study the Nika Collider objects first. And as for this misprint in paragraph 116 on page 29, that's also a misprint. I needed to write 6 instead of 5. And also for artificial intelligence, well, I agree with you, but that's a problem for the future. And the second question of Professor Peterhof about the experiments. I agree with... I initially planned to describe it, so that's incorrect description of chapters 3 and 4. And in these chapters, I provided the possible solution methods. And as for the comments of Professor Saidnikov, I agree that I had a misprint about chapter 5. I don't have this chapter 5 in the work. And also we do not use hardware, just software and mathematical calculation methods. That's why I've chosen this title for my work. Thank you. Is everyone satisfied with the answers, or do you want to continue the discussion? Okay, everyone is satisfied. Okay. Now, possible speeches from our guests. Do we have anyone who wanted to deliver a report? Okay, no one. And did we get any external questions from listeners? Oh, no? Okay. Then I would like to give the floor to the thesis supervisor. 3 minutes, please. You can take your seat. distinguished colleagues. Well, basically, I'm satisfied with the speech that I heard. I understand how complicated it is for lies. But first of all, I would like to mention that all these critical remarks that were mentioned by colleagues, they are quite adequate, and I actually expected them. Yet, unfortunately, we lacked certain knowledge and time, because Laith had a lot of time during which he could not work. Therefore, we did not get all the results that we planned to obtain. But still, I believe that this work actually gave us certain developments and results, to see it as a ready-made instrument. And all these remarks that you could have used mathematics and other methods, I fully agree with them, and I'm working with them myself. But unfortunately, we didn't have time for that. We didn't have opportunities for that. But still, I believe that work of Laith is quite sufficient. It's quite well described, though there are numerous misprints, but still, sometimes I found these misprints in the last stage, because I was really, it was really hard to see them all at once. And we got the result that we plan to obtain, and I believe that Laith deserves the academic degree of candidate of sciences. Okay, thank you. And now I would like to ask the candidate for the degree and the members of the board if you have any comments on the procedure that we used during the consideration, or do you want to change something? No comments, no objections. Okay. Now we need to discuss the following question. We're going to have open balloting. Do we need to discuss anything before the open balloting? Do we need to organize a closed discussion? If we do, I ask to switch off the broadcast if needed. I have no comments. No need for that. No need for a closed discussion. Okay, then we continue our broadcast. And now I'm going to draw conclusions. So we heard the presentation on the thesis. Laith described what he meant. He answered the questions. All the members of the board delivered their reviews. All were positive about the thesis. All the remarks that were done, they were essential. But to my mind, it seems to me that as a qualification work, this thesis is finished. And I believe that we can already can draw conclusions already. So now it's 7 minutes to 3 p.m. Moscow time, and we shift to the vote. So I raise a question on awarding the academic degree of candidate of technical sciences to Laith Alzayadi in specialization 1 to 2 mathematical modeling, numerical methods, and program complexes. And I would like to emphasize that voting for the award of the academic degree, each member of the board agrees that Article 11 of the order is not violated by the candidate, and I would like to quote it. And that's about the use of individual results. And let me remind you that the decision of the dissertation board on conferring the academic degree is positive, provided more than 50% of the board members, but not fewer than 3 people, voted in favor. That's in conformity with Section 17 of the order. And I would like to ask Professor Degtyarev, what's your opinion? I vote for the award of the academic degree. Okay. Professor Ovsyannikov. I also vote for the award of the academic degree. Okay, Professor Vadyaha. I also vote for the award of the academic degree. Okay, Professor Gnatich. I also support this work. Okay, thank you. So I, chair of the board, Alexander Bogdanov, also vote for the award of the academic degree to Mr. Alzayadi. And I can state that 5 members of the board voted for the award of the degree. No one abstained from the vote, and no one voted against this work. Therefore, we award the degree of Candidate of Technical Sciences to Laith Alzayadi in specialization 1 to 2 mathematical model and numerical methods and program complexes. And before we congratulate our candidate for the degree, I would like to give Laith the floor for the finalizing remarks. Laith, you have 2 minutes. First of all, I would like to thank every one of you for spending your time. And on behalf of the members of the board, I would like to congratulate our applicant. So congratulations. So congratulations and all the success to you. And here we stop. I believe we can finish our session, and please turn off the broadcast.